Welcome to the Darkrai Hard Mode Guide. This is an extremely challenging boss battle. It will require you to have meticulous planning, and even with that, it may take you multiple attempts to execute, even with attentive fine-tuning. You need every tenth of a percentage of damage that you can do to get through this one, and I may have said that damage matters before, but I really cannot stress how tight the margins are in this fight. You'll see why shortly. So getting into it, this is the Team Pori first kill. This is not the first kill that I'm aware of, but this is the kill that I have footage of. Jedge, I believe that's how you say their name, I think had the first overall kill. At least that's the one that I'm aware of was first. But we'll be going over this one first. You'll see we have a Primeape on screen, 2 Metachams, and a Murkrow. Murkrow is obviously for Tailwind. You'll need 2 Tailwinds this fight. 1 on turn 1, 1 on turn 5. There's a few approaches that you can take to the first turn to deal with the AoE sleep. You can use Vital Spirit Primeape as an option, and then that frees up the item slot, or you can use a very hard hitter that can then use a Chesto Berry. Metacham is a good option. Pretty much any of the super hard hitting fighting types are going to be the pick here. And that is true for turns 1, 2, and parts of turn 3, or all of turn 3, kind of depending on how the fight plays out for your team composition. One thing that I really need to stress is that you're going to need to get a group of 4 people together that are willing to test and reattempt and test and reattempt and tweak until you get it exact, because you will need to spend every move correctly. And that becomes especially important when typing gets inverted at 50%, just like it did in the previous raid, the easy mode version of this fight. At 20%, it happens at the halfway mark here. And then the special and physical typings of moves flip at 20%. So it just becomes a total mindfuck at the end. If you plan accordingly, though, you'll do fine. But going over the beginning of the fight, all close combat to start. Tailwind, turn 2 here. We have Gallade with Sacred Sword. We have close combat Breloom, a great option. Plenty of people have catching Brelooms. Could be an easy slot in for most. Just needs close combat. And Blaziken with close combat, another wonderful option. There's plenty to go around for hard-hitting close combat users, so there should be no shortage at that point. What you can do is save your Gallades, though. It's an enticing choice to do huge Sacred Sword damage in the first half here. You can save your Gallades for the type inversion to do psychic damage against Darkrai. It seems like there may not be as many good options in the later half of the fight to do damage, so it's easier, I think, to potentially save that Gallade for later, and also because if it's high speed, it can enable assurance users later in the fight, namely Tyranitar. So there's not much timing to be had in these first 3 turns, but the first 3 turns line up the timing for the 3rd turn. So if you do exactly 5% damage, the 3rd Pokemon of turn 3 will give Darkrai the stat flip. So you'll need to plan if your group is able to do 5% every time, which is unlikely, I think. It will happen mid turn 3. If it doesn't, you can actually maybe reduce your damage slightly and have it go at the end of turn 3. I believe they set it up so that this Heracross does the exact amount of damage to push after this turn, just to make the fight a little bit easier. It's harder to deal with it if it's mid-turn, but that's an example of kind of the level of meticulousness that you're going to need to get this fight down. We have 5% across the board here. Heracross does the 4%, I believe, like I said. We'll get there shortly. As far as items go, you will need to be very optimal with that. So gems are, I think, a requirement at this point. I don't think that you can do the fight without gems. You're going to have to use Choice Band, Choice Specs, Type Gems, and Life Orb in order to do the most damage possible. You may be able to get away with an Expert Belt or Type Plate here or there, and additionally, you will need Status Berries to deal with the sleep effects. But for now, I'll say the close combat users, you'll have to do some mix of Life Orb, probably Choice Band, and Fighting Gem for those first 3 turns. Getting into turn 4, depending on exactly how your damage goes, what your damage profile is on this turn, there will be an AoE sleep that happens. You could safeguard for this, but I recommend using Chesto Berries. This turn plays out so that I believe it was actually an error on their part. I'm not exactly sure. One of the Tyranitars gets slept, but for most cases, you will push the sleep after 2 Pokemon have moved in this turn. So you'll need 2 slow Pokemon on this turn 4 in order to equip them with Lumberries, and then they will, or Lum or Chesto, either works, and then they'll wake up and be able to do damage, albeit a bit weakened because they don't have damage support from the item, but still not a total loss in damage. Tyranitar doing about 3%, I think, 3.5% assurance without an item, times 2, 7% is better than doing a damage cap with, let's say, a safeguard on this turn instead. So you'll just have to time that. It's a little bit more damage, it's a little bit more forgiveness, but you'll just have to figure out the timing, like I said there. You'll see that Tyranitar was asleep, and I believe the damage didn't go off. I think I go to ask here what went wrong. I was spectating as things were happening and letting some of my own Pokemon to help this kill over the finish line. But the final mechanic is coming up here with the special physical inversion, and that's, I'm sure, a mind bender for most people. But essentially what's going to happen is the type, whether physical or special, of a move switches. So the stats don't matter as much for each individual Pokemon as long as you're clicking the correct type of move. Basically, what I can recommend is use Hydreigon or Medicham clicking Psychic. So Psychic becomes a physical move, Assurance becomes a special move. Oh, and of course the Tailwind this turn. So you see a similar setup here. I believe that they were unsure exactly when the sleep was going to go off, so they had some flexibility for turn 4, turn 5, and what they were bringing. You'll have a Honchkrow with the higher speed, makes it very easy to click Assurance with the Tyranitar. Tyranitar also has a high base special attack, so if that flip happens, it will calculate based on Tyranitar's special attack because Assurance becomes a special move. It's still over 100, doing decent damage. I think it's still over 3% for Tyranitar clicking that. So that's a really good option there for that, for this turn in those slots. You still have the Tailwind for speed. You have something leading. Honchkrow could be replaced by something that does a bit more damage, either another Gallade, Psychic Gem, potentially doing Psycho Cut, or something like a Zoroark clicking, I believe it gets Crunch, Crunch being a special move potentially, or you can also use it if it doesn't flip the physical special inversion at that point. It could have the option to do either with Dark Pulse. So it'll depend on exactly how much damage you're doing, how your items are set up, how that last turn goes. But the second half of the fight becomes very, very particular. It may take you quite a few attempts to get it perfect so that you're doing the right amount of damage at the right time. This final turn is Choice Specs Hydreigon. There are 4 of them. You will need to enable yourself to guarantee that one goes first so that you can crunch. So you may have to modify EVs in order to get that to happen. So having one have one more speed than the rest so that will be the crunch Hydreigon and the rest can Assurance. Crunch will do about 3% to 4% damage, and then the Assurances should do 5% each, that being the damage cap, of course. You can go with Medicham here, clicking Psychic in this last. That's another really good option for this final phase. As it has pure power, Psychic becomes a physical attack. It will do damage cap as well. You won't have to worry about the timing. The flip side, though, with the Hydreigons is you get to use Choice Specs as an item slot. There's different ways that you can approach this final phase and the entire phase, or the entire fight itself. That will be entirely up to you, the link that you find, and the group of people that you assemble that are going to be willing to really kind of almost math out exactly what happens. It's definitely going to be a bit of a slog for people to get this down at first. Get those 3 close combat users, potentially a Gallade, a Tyranitar, and a Hydreigon for phase 3. Other options include like Zoroark, as I mentioned. You can use Honchkrow as well. There are quite a few options, but overall, this is definitely the most difficult content that we've seen so far. It does end up being a straightforward damage dealing fight. You just need to find the right composition and then get the perfect timing down with the group that you assemble. So I really recommend joining a team in game so that you can find people that are like-minded and willing to spend the time rather than most of the other fights have been great for finding people on Discord, finding people on global, but that may not be enough for this one. Go out, you have to level up the things that you need to level 100. I'll probably give more specific recommendations on composition in the guide in the description where I've been keeping all of the raid info assembled. So take a look at that. Shout out to Jedge for the first kill. They're extremely impressive with that one. Shout out to Team Pori for this one. Shout out to Rach. Her recommendation I need to pass along as well is put speed tiers in your nicknames so that you can see exactly when a Pokemon will move rather than checking the speeds every time. It becomes a bit tedious. So if you put speed in the nickname, you can at a glance see exactly how a turn will play out, and that's going to save you a lot of headache in the long run. Other than that, that's all I have for now. If you have any questions, I'm on Discord. You can post in the YouTube comments here. I'll try to answer them as quickly as I can. Other than that, good luck with this fight. It's extremely difficult content. Don't expect to do it first attempt, second, third, fourth, fifth, even first 10. Set your expectations at a reasonable level. And with that said, I wish you the best of luck and have a good one.